The world number one in the Filipina sensation, two players who could meet in a blockbuster semifinal in Toronto, have already crossed paths in the most unexpected way possible. Before the Canadian Open even began, an airport encounter between Aryna Sabalenka and Eala sent the internet into a frenzy, and what happened next has left the tennis world completely stunned. Before the first ball was struck at the Canadian Open in Toronto, before the sold-out crowds packed into Sobeys Stadium, before Eala and Aryna Sabalenka even stepped onto center court, a single moment at the airport set the tennis world ablaze. Videos began circulating on social media, fans spotting both players at the airport, arriving in Toronto for the prestigious WTA 1000 event. The world know. 1. Aryna Sabalenka walking through the terminal with her team, and just moments later the Filipina sensation Eala arriving fresh off her historic Washington, D.C. triumph. The internet exploded. Side-by-side videos of the two players at the same airport at nearly the same time flooded Twitter and Instagram. Fans began speculating. Had they spoken? Had they acknowledged each other? Was there tension? Or was there mutual respect? While no direct interaction between the two was captured in the viral moments, the timing of their arrivals sparked a frenzy of speculation. Two of the biggest stories in women's tennis converging on Toronto. The defending champion Aryna Sabalenka, who had dominated the tour with her powerful game, and the rising star Eala, who had just beaten 6 top 10 players in 2026 and captured the hearts of millions. The Canadian Open draw had already set up a potential semifinal clash between Sabalenka and Eala, but the airport sighting added a new layer of intrigue. Would the two collide on court? Was the viral moment a sign of things to come? The answer, as the tournament would soon reveal, was far more compelling than anyone expected, and the tennis world couldn't stop talking about it. The videos began appearing on social media before anyone could fully process what they were seeing. Side-by-side clips, posted within minutes of each other, showing two of the biggest names in women's tennis arriving at Pearson International Airport in Toronto. On one side, the world know. 1. Aryna Sabalenka, walking through the terminal with her team, her signature blonde hair pulled back, her expression focused and determined. On the other, the Filipina sensation Eala, fresh off her historic Washington, D.C. triumph, stepping off her flight with the quiet confidence of someone who had just changed the course of her career forever. The internet exploded. Within hours, the videos had been shared thousands of times across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Fans began speculating wildly. Had the two spoken? Had they acknowledged each other? Was there tension between the defending champion and the rising star? Or was there something else entirely? A moment of mutual respect between two athletes at very different stages of their careers. The timing of their arrivals was almost too perfect. Sabalenka, the top seed and defending champion at the Canadian Open, had arrived to begin her campaign for a second consecutive title. Eala, the 25th seed and the most talked-about player on the tour, had arrived to continue a journey that had already defied all expectations. And the viral videos had captured the collision of two worlds, the established dominance of the world number one, and the meteoric rise of a 21-year-old who had become a movement. But what made the videos truly shocking wasn't just the coincidence of their arrivals. It was what they represented. Aryna Sabalenka, the Belarusian powerhouse, had been the most dominant player on the WTA Tour for the past 2 years. She had won 3 Grand Slam titles. She had spent nearly 50 consecutive weeks at number 1. She was the standard against which every other player was measured. And Eala, just 21 years old and fresh off her first WTA Tour title, was the player everyone was measuring against that standard. The draw for the Canadian Open had already set the stage for a potential semifinal clash between Sabalenka and Eala. Eala, seeded 25th, was in the bottom half of the draw, along with No. 4 seed Coco Gauff and number 6 seed Linda Noskova. Sabalenka, the top seed, was in top half, but if both players advanced through their respective sections, they would meet in the semifinals. The viral airport moment had added a new layer of intrigue to a potential matchup that was already one of the most anticipated in the tournament. But here's what really stunned the tennis world. The videos weren't just about two players arriving at the same airport. They were about the contrast between two journeys. Sabalenka had been expected to win. She had been the favorite in nearly every tournament she entered for 2 years. Eala had been the underdog. She had been the player who wasn't supposed to be there, the player who had been told she was too small, too young, too inexperienced to compete with the best, and yet, there she was, arriving in Toronto, seated in a WTA 1000 event. The star of the show, tournament director Carl Hale, had seen it all in his nearly 2 decades of running the Canadian Open. He had hosted the biggest names in tennis history: Serena Williams, Venus Williams, Roger Federer, Nadal, Novak Djokovic. But when he saw the reaction to Eala's arrival, the sold-out tickets, the packed stadiums, the viral videos, even he was stunned. "Alex is an absolute blessing to the sport of tennis at our tournament," Hale said. "It's an amazing tournament to have her here playing singles and doubles with Venus." The airport moment had gone viral because it captured something that couldn't be planned or manufactured. It captured the collision of two worlds, the old guard and the new, the established champions and the rising stars, the players who had been expected to dominate, and the player who had defied every expectation. And in that collision, the tennis world saw something that would change the sport forever. The videos weren't just about Sabalenka and Eala, they were about what they represented. A sport in transition, a new generation arriving, and a 21-year-old from the Philippines who had become the face of that change. The viral airport moment between Eala and Aryna Sabalenka wasn't just a coincidence, it was a preview of what could be the most anticipated matchup of the Canadian Open. A potential semifinal clash between the world number one and the Philippines sensation that would pit the sport's most dominant force against its fastest rising star. According to the tournament draw, Eala is the 25th seed at the National Bank Open, earning a first-round bye after her historic Washington, D.C. triumph. She sits in the bottom half of the draw, alongside number 4 seed Coco Gauff and number 6 seed Linda Noskova. Sabalenka, the top seed, leads the top half, but if both players advance through their respective sections, they would meet in the semifinals. The numbers make this matchup fascinating. Sabalenka has been the most dominant player on the WTA Tour for the past 2 years. She has spent 94 consecutive weeks at number 1 and has won 3 Grand Slam titles. She arrived in Toronto with a 33-5 record for the season, including an incredible 23-1 on hard courts. Her powerful serve, aggressive baseline game, and relentless intensity have made her the standard against which every other player is measured. Eala, meanwhile, has been rewriting the record books. She has beaten 7 top 10 players in 2026. She has risen from number 140 to number 20 in just 18 months. She has won her first WTA Tour title, reached the 4th round of Wimbledon, and now arrives in Toronto as one of the most talked-about players on the tour. Her left-handed serve, fearless shot-making, and uncanny ability to rise to the occasion have made her a nightmare for even the best players in the world. The two have never faced each other before. Their head-to-head record stands at 0-0, and that's what makes the potential matchup so intriguing. Eala has proven she can beat the best. She defeated world No. 3 Jessica Pegula in the DC Open final. She ended Iga Swiatek's Wimbledon title defense. She dismantled Naomi Osaka in the Washington semifinals. But Sabalenka is a different kind of challenge. The Belarusian powerhouse doesn't just beat opponents, she overwhelms them. She crushes them with the sheer force of her game. For Eala, a potential meeting with Sabalenka would be the ultimate test. It would be the moment where she proves that her rise isn't just a hot streak. It's a changing of the guard. For Sabalenka, it would be a chance to show that the old guard isn't ready to surrender just yet. The road to that semifinal is lined with challenges. Eala must first get past Caty McNally in the round of 32, after McNally stunned Wimbledon champion Linda Noskova in the round of 64. Then, she could face Coco Gauff in the quarterfinals, a player who has praised Eala's impact on the sport and admitted she pretended the pro-Eala chants were for her. Only then would she face Sabalenka. But if the viral airport moment taught us anything, it's that this tournament is about more than just tennis. It's about the collision of two worlds. The established dominance of the world number one and the meteoric rise of a 21-year-old who has become a movement. And the tennis world is watching to see what happens when they finally meet. The viral airport moment between Eala and Aryna Sabalenka had set the tennis world abuzz, but the real story wasn't about a chance encounter at Pearson International Airport. It was about what would happen if these two players actually met on the court, and the numbers told a story that was as compelling as any rivalry in tennis. First, the head-to-head, 0-0. Eala and Sabalenka had never played each other before. In a sport where players constantly cross paths, the fact that these two had never faced off made a potential meeting at the Canadian Open all the more intriguing. The unknown added an extra layer of drama to an already stacked tournament. But the numbers beyond the head-to-head revealed the true contrast between these two players. Aryna Sabalenka's dominance, the world number one, arrived in Toronto with a 33-5 record for the season and an astonishing 23-1 record on hard courts. Her only defeat on the surface had come against Elena Rybakina in the Australian Open final. She had won 6 matches each at Indian Wells and Miami earlier in the year to complete the Sunshine Double, and her hard-court winning streak had reached 13 matches. Sabalenka was on a historic run. She was the first player since Serena Williams in 2015 to win 24 of her first 25 WTA-level hard-court matches in a season. Her 34-3 record in matches where she won the first set was a testament to her dominance. She had spent 94 consecutive weeks at number 1 and had won 3 Grand Slam titles. Eala's meteoric rise. Eala had risen from number 140 to number 20 in just 18 months, becoming the first Filipina to crack the top 20. Her Washington, D.C. title run alone was the stuff of legend. She had defeated 5 consecutive opponents who were either former Grand Slam finalists or current top 10 players, including the tournament's top 3 seeds. It was a feat that hadn't been accomplished since Barbora Krejcikova at Dubai 2023. Eala had 9 career top 10 victories, 7 of them in 2026. She had beaten Iga Swiatek twice, at the 2025 Miami Open and at Wimbledon 2026. She had defeated Coco Gauff in Indian Wells, Elena Rybakina in Berlin, and Jessica Pegula in the DC Open final. The list of players she had conquered read like a who's who of women's tennis. The numbers highlighted the stark contrast between the two players. Sabalenka had built her career on power and consistency. She had spent years at the top, accumulating titles and Grand Slams. Eala had built her career on fearlessness and adaptability. She had spent the past 18 months proving that she belonged with the best. Sabalenka was 26 years old, in the prime of her career. Eala was 21, still years away from her physical peak. Sabalenka had 19 career singles titles. Eala had 3. Sabalenka had earned over $50 million in prize money. Eala had earned just over $2.6 million. The gap in experience and accomplishments was vast. But Eala had something that couldn't be measured by numbers: momentum. She was on the kind of run that changes careers. She had beaten 7 top 10 players in 2026, tied for the most on the WTA Tour. She had won her first WTA Tour title. She had reached the 4th round of Wimbledon. She had become a movement. The Canadian Open was the perfect stage for a potential showdown. Sabalenka, the top seed, was in the top half of the draw. Eala, the 25th seed, was in the bottom half. If both players advanced through their respective sections, they would meet in the semifinals. The tennis world was already salivating at the prospect. And then there was the viral airport moment. The chance encounter that had brought these two players together before they had ever faced each other on the court. The moment that had captured the imagination of fans around the world. Was it a sign, a preview, a hint of what was to come? The answer, as the tournament would reveal, was far more compelling than anyone expected. Because the numbers didn't just tell the story of two players. They told the story of a sport in transition. A sport where the old guard was being challenged by a new generation. A sport where a 21-year-old from the Philippines was rewriting the record books. Sabalenka was the standard, Eala was the challenger, and the tennis world was watching to see what happened next. The airport moment between Eala and Aryna Sabalenka had set the tennis world abuzz. But the real question on everyone's mind was simple: would they actually meet on the court? The Canadian Open draw had set the stage perfectly. Sabalenka, the world number 1, was in the top half of the bracket. Eala, the 25th seed and the most talked-about player on the tour, was in the bottom half. If both players advanced through their respective sections, they would collide in a blockbuster semifinal that would pit the sport's most dominant force against its fastest rising star. The tournament was already historic. Eala's opening match against Alicia Parks had sold out in just 30 minutes, forcing organizers to move her from the 2,800-seat grandstand to center court. Our grandstand court is 2,800 seats. We can't put her on there because she probably sold upwards of 5,000 tickets. Tournament director Carl Hale had revealed. It was a record that even the big three couldn't touch. Only Serena Williams had achieved this feat in the last 20 years. But the journey to that potential semifinal was treacherous. Eala had to navigate a path that included Caddy McNally in the round of 32, a player who had just stunned reigning Wimbledon champion Linda Noskova. Then, a potential quarterfinal against Coco Gauff, the world number 4 who had praised Eala's impact on the sport. And only then would she face Sabalenka, if the world no one could navigate her own path through the draw. The numbers told the story of the potential showdown. Sabalenka had been the most dominant player on the WTA Tour for 2 years. She had spent 94 consecutive weeks at number 1 and had won 3 Grand Slam titles. Her 33-5 record for the season included a staggering 23-1 on hard courts. Eala, meanwhile, had risen from no. 140 to number 20 in just 18 months. She had beaten 7 top 10 players in 2026, including world number 3 Jessica Pegula in the DC Open final. She was on a revenge tour that had seen her avenge losses to 6 consecutive opponents. But perhaps the most compelling part of the story was the contrast between the two journeys. Sabalenka had been expected to dominate. She had been the favorite in nearly every tournament she entered for 2 years. Eala had been the underdog, the player who wasn't supposed to be there. The player who had been told she was too small, too young, too inexperienced to compete with the best. And yet there she was, seated in a WTA 1000 event, the star of the show. The player who had sold out stadiums and captivated millions. The viral airport moment had captured the collision of two worlds, the old guard and the new, the established champions and the rising stars. And in that collision, the tennis world saw something that would change the sport forever. The tournament continues, the path is set, the showdown awaits. And for Eala, the Filipina sensation, the road to that showdown will define not just her season but her career.